Okay, hey everybody, this is Rob Galvin. Thanks for joining today. I'm the Developer Community Manager for RhoMobile Suite. This is the monthly Developer Talk Series that we do for our RhoMobile developer community. Just going to give you an update on what's coming up next month for our, I should remove the word webinar there, it's now Dev Talk. So the next Dev Talk, what's coming up next month. I'll talk about that in a second. Today we have. I'm really pleased to have a partner on, a special guest presenter, Banu Morampudi from Kutir Technologies. He's the VP of Engineering, and he has volunteered to present and walk through a really kind of slick application that they built that has to do with RhoMobile, of course, and RhoConnect, as well as talking to GitHub. So it's a really a nice all-around solution, and Banu will go over the details of that. And he'll talk a little bit more about Kutir, but Kutir has been really embraced RhoMobile for the past couple of years now. They really have developed quite a few applications and have really embraced the whole concept of Rho. Has also been involved in some of our training activities, including our last app forum in North America. If you were there last June, Banu did a presentation on jQuery and jQuery Mobile. So it's actually recorded. It's available on Launchpad. So be sure to check it out. These guys are definitely one of our top experts in RhoMobile and actively participate in our community as well on the discussion forums. So I hope you'll find this presentation interesting. And I know I did, and actually learned a lot from looking at the application. So Banu will go through that in a few minutes. So next month is April 3rd is our next session, and I will be doing a UI framework roundup, so to speak. So there's a lot of different choices. You may know that we ship and with by default jQuery Mobile when you build an application in RhoStudio, but there are other alternatives out there. So I'm going to kind of do a roundup. We'll get into some concepts about responsive layout and design. Look and see how we can integrate some of our data features with some of these UI frameworks quite nicely, and we'll really kind of go through kitchen soup of UI frameworks with some demonstrations of actually using them and how to replace them, how to replace the default jQuery mobile framework that we ship with. And if you missed last month's webinar or Dev Talk, we talked about the SB1. I went through a series of instructions on how to build applications for the SB1, which is one of our new latest and greatest products. There's some things you need to know about building applications for the SB1 when it comes to the device. It's a unique device with e-ink display. Some things about performance and how to make sure your applications are performing well. So be sure to check out that Dev Talk, as well as you can see the last number of sessions that we've covered on a variety of different topics. And just as we are presenting today, having a guest speaker, the opportunity is open for the community as well to participate in presenting a topic if you'd like. So please reach out to me, Rob Galvin, rob.galvin at motorolasolutions.com, or you can find me on Launchpad as well if you're interested in presenting a session. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and jump right into the topic of today. I'm going to pass the baton over to Banu. Banu, welcome. Thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Rob,
Let
for
me,
having me.
yeah, let me hand you the baton here and make your presenter. Okay, you should have presenter rights now.
Okay.
And
Let me know if
before,
you can see
yeah,
my
while
screen.
Banu's getting set up, let me just mention again, as always, I see some new faces here, but make sure you ask questions and communicate via the GoToMeeting question feature. We'll be going through all the questions at the end, but if you see something that you want to mention or talk about, please do so as we're doing it. We'll just get to it at the end. So, all right, Banu, we see your screen.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Great. Yep.
Thank you for the kind words. Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about Git Mobile. Git Mobile is the name of the application that we gave to the mobile interface we built to GitHub. Um, so before I get into more details about the application itself, a few words about our company. So we are Kutir Technologies. We are a custom mobile and web application development company. We've been around since 2003, and we've been building mobile applications using the Rho platform since January of 2011. Before Motorola acquired RhoMobile, we were one of the elite partners of RhoMobile. And like Rob said, we've been with the Rho platform for a long time, and we have embraced the platform, and we've built several applications using that platform. Now that RhoMobile is part of Motorola Solutions, we are an application partner for Motorola Solutions. We've been a very profitable and stable company since our inception. The last year we've had a good success in all of our business, and we've had about 40% year over year revenue growth. We are based out of Newark, California, and we have developers scattered all over the world. So we have some in the US, some in Spain, some in India, and we do have a offshore development center in India as well. And we've received quite a few awards from the industry. Inc. 5000 and Business Leader both have recognized the work we have done and the growth we have shown. So we've been building web applications for the last 15 plus years, and mobile applications using the Rho platform for a little over 2 years now. And we have built several large enterprise applications for both Motorola customers as well as our own. And we have demonstrated expertise in the platform. One of the largest deployments of the Rho platform on the ET1 is for a medical equipment rental company based out of Minneapolis, and we have built that, and that product is going to be in production in about a month or so. So that's one of the largest Rho deployment as well as the ET1 deployment. Our management has several decades of experience in mobility, so we have experts in our company that have background not just in mobility, but we have people from Motorola Solutions working for us both now and in the past. So we have a good support system there, and knowledge of the framework as well. Okay, so that's about us, and we can answer any questions about our company towards the end of the session if you have any questions. So today's topic is going to be about Git Mobile. Like I said, it is a mobile interface that's written on top of GitHub. So for those not familiar with GitHub, it's a web interface to a Git repository. So this repository is in the cloud. It's run by a company called GitHub. So basically, if you want to run and use repositories in the cloud and not run your own repositories, Git repositories, then you would use this. Many of the open source applications and a lot of the companies nowadays use GitHub. And we built a mobile interface on top of that. It's written in Rhodes and uses RhoConnect for all of the synchronization. Uses OAuth for authentication. We'll get a little bit into detail about OAuth and why we chose that. And of course, because it's written in Rhodes, it runs on any platform that is supported by Rhodes. So the way we are going to go through the presentation today is I'm going to give a brief demonstration of the application. Then I'm going to present what OAuth is and how to use GitHub's OAuth APIs. And then we'll have a code walkthrough of how we use the GitHub OAuth API. I'm going to show a little bit of the UI code that we wrote in Rhodes, and then do a brief walkthrough of the some of the key features of the source adapter, the synchronization component. And then we'll open it up for questions. So let me begin the demonstration of the app. So I'm going to be using the Rho simulator. So the first thing that happens when you launch the application is you are asked to log into GitHub. So at this point, I would use my GitHub credentials to log in. Our application has no way of knowing what your login ID and password are because we use OAuth. So you are directly logging in to GitHub. So I sign into GitHub, and then we see a list of repositories. So if I were logging in for the very first time, I would have been presented with a screen that would have asked me if I wanted to give access to the application to use my GitHub information. But because I've already used my login to log into this account, it has not asked me. So that's the way the GitHub OAuth API works. So once you give permission, it stays. So the first thing we see is a list of all of the GitHub repositories that I own. I select a repository and it shows me the commits for this repository. Our presentation today is going to focus more on the issue tracking component of GitHub. So apart from acting as a source code repository, GitHub also allows you to open issues against the repository. So you can open issues, close them, label them, comment on them, and things like that. So right now I'm showing my GitHub account for the test repository, and I can see there are 7 issues. So for people who want to use this issue tracking capability of GitHub, we have provided a mobile interface to that, and that's what we are focusing on today. So let me go ahead and create an issue on my Rho simulator. So let's call this issue 8, and let's say we create the body of this issue is created at 9:15 a.m. And so the issue is now created and it's on my device. So now if I hit sync, it will synchronize with GitHub and push the new issue back up to GitHub. So on GitHub, if I do a refresh, I see that issue 8 has been created. So the way we have implemented this is there's a two-way synchronization. So whatever you do on the web, on the GitHub page, uh, will synchronize to the mobile device, and whatever you do on the device gets synchronized back to GitHub. So let me make a change. Made some change on the GitHub web page, and let me update this issue. Um, and then if I go back and do a sync, I should see the same change being reflected on my device. And this same thing, if I make changes here and do a sync, it should reflect back on the web interface. So let me refresh here. There you go. It says made change on RhoSimulator. So so it's a two-way synchronization that we've written using RhoConnect. So that is a brief demonstration of the issue tracking feature of the application. Uh, so let me dive back into the presentation itself and talk a little bit about how we used the GitHub's OAuth APIs to do the authentication. So OAuth is basically it's a protocol that allows a third-party application to access some of the data from an application that you have access to. So I have an account on GitHub. I want my mobile application, which is a third-party application, to be able to access my GitHub information so that the mobile application can show my GitHub information. Now, there are two ways of accomplishing this. I can log in using my login and password to the mobile application, which can then transfer those credentials to GitHub, and GitHub can say yes or no. But then we run into a couple of issues. One is the mobile application now knows my login ID and password, and I don't want it to have access to that. And the second thing is, because it has access to my login ID and password, it has access to my entire GitHub information, which I may not want to give it. I may want to choose to restrict access only to listing the repositories or showing only the issues and not the core repository itself. I can't do that if I use a simple basic authentication. So to circumvent those problems, or rather to overcome those problems, there is an open standard called OAuth. It's an industry-wide standard that almost every service provider uses. So it's a protocol that lets users access to it lets users to give access to their data to another application on their behalf. So basically, if I am using application 1, and if I want to use certain features of application 2 for which I have access, then what we do in our code is basically have application one direct the user to the login page of application two. So we are always authenticating against application two. So application one never sees my login ID and password. Then once I authenticate successfully with application 2, application 2 will ask me, the user, hey, this application 1 wants to use some of the data that you have with me, application 2. Do you want to give permission? And if I say yes, then application 2 then redirects me back to application 1, which is the application I started out with. And then now application 1 has access to whatever data that I gave permission to for application 2. This way, we only authenticate against our core application that we want to give access to the data of the core application that we want to give access to. So applying this concept to GitHub's OAuth API. So we have this application called Git Mobile, and we want to basically use the information on GitHub. So I want this application to have access to the repositories and the issue tracking feature of GitHub. So it's a three-step process with the GitHub API. In the first step, the user is redirected to the GitHub access page. And the API that I've listed on the page, GitHub/login OAuth authorize. So that is the one that my code needs to send to GitHub to get the user to authorize my application to access the GitHub APIs. So GitHub expects a client ID as part of the authorized API call. So this client ID is the one that you receive when you register your application with GitHub. So you send the client ID via the authorized call, and you receive a code back. So at this point, if you have been able to successfully log into GitHub, then GitHub pops up a page that says, hey, Git Mobile wants to access some of your data on GitHub. Do you want to give permission to the user? And if I say yes, then GitHub redirects me back to Git Mobile. And this time, we have to send the code that we received in the previous step to receive an access token. So this access token is expected by GitHub for any subsequent API calls that we make to GitHub. So we use this access token, we use the code and call the OAuth/access token API, which then gives us the access token. And like I said, any subsequent calls we make, we have to use this access token. So let me just show you the code to explain what I just presented. So when a user clicks on the login page, it calls the GitHub login method. So basically, in this method, we are saying go to GitHub and call the authorize API.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no.
So inside,
Hey,
Rob, were
Manu.
you saying
Yeah,
something?
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
at first I didn't see your code. You were a little bit ahead of what the screen was showing, but now I see it. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So inside the login method, like I said, the first thing we need to do is call the authorize method. So if I go back to the presentation, so the first thing we need to do is call the authorize method and send the client ID to the method. So which is what we are doing. So we are saying authorize, and this is my client ID. And this client ID is we receive this when we register our application with GitHub the very first time we sign up our application. Additionally, we also have to send a URL for GitHub to redirect back to once we successfully authenticate with GitHub. Uh, so the callback URI is basically, in our case, what we are using is we are using a service called redirect me to. Uh, so when we use a mobile device, it doesn't have a static IP address. But GitHub requires that you provide it a host name or a static IP address um, that you want GitHub to redirect to. So one of the things. So let me show you what you would need to provide to GitHub when you register your application. So the application name and the callback URL. So because we don't know what our callback URL is going to be because of the dynamic IP address of the mobile devices, um, we have to provide it some static IP address or a host name. So in this case, we are using a service called redirect me to. So this is the callback URL we registered with GitHub. So we are basically telling GitHub, once I successfully log in, redirect me to this redirect me to uh, address. And um, we internally, in turn, we tell redirect me, hey, uh, redirect all of the requests back to my mobile device. And since we don't know what port roads runs on, we give it the system .get property roads port. So now redirect me to knows where to redirect the call back to my application. So once I log in, GitHub, as part of the login, we send it the client code, and then it knows how to redirect the service back to me, request back to me. So this is the GitHub callback is the callback method that we have. So once the authentication and the authorization with GitHub has happened, um, uh, this callback method is called. And if you go back to the presentation for a second, so we said, so we've done with the authorize method. So we are at this stage where GitHub is redirecting to our application. At this point, we have to send the code to it to receive the access token, which is what we are doing here. So we are calling the access token API. We are calling we are sending the client ID along with the code that we just received from GitHub. So once we do that, we receive a token back from GitHub, and any subsequent call that we make, for example, here, where we say, give me information about this user, we are sending this token as part of the request. So we store this token, and every time we make any call to GitHub, whether it is to get a listing of all the repositories, or to get all of my issues, or to do synchronization of my issues back to GitHub, we use this token. So that is a brief code walkthrough of the OAuth authentication process. Let me talk briefly about the user interface itself. This is standard roads code. There is nothing that we have done special here. To find a list of issues, we have this get issues method, which basically does an issue.findAll. So any issues that are stored on my device are retrieved by this method. The index method lists all of the issues. The show method shows all of the details of the issue. The new method lets me create an issue, and the edit method lets me update an issue. Apart from that, we have a method to do the sync. And then as part of the synchronization, we say sync engine.doSync source. And then once the synchronization is complete, we need to have a callback method. So what should happen once the synchronization completes? So we tell the code that it has to go to the issue callback method. And inside the issue callback method, we basically show if the action is successful, then we show all of the issues. Otherwise, we show an error. So this is the controller method for issues, very standard roads code. Let me spend a few minutes on the source adapter, the RhoConnect portion that allows us to do the actual synchronization to GitHub. So we have as the people who are familiar with the RhoConnect code might know, there are a few standard methods that we need to write as part of our source adapter. One is the query. The query is the method that we would write to get the data from the third-party service, in this case GitHub. And then create is the method where we have the logic to synchronize any new issues that we have created. So this method is called when we have new issues on our device, but they have not yet been synchronized to GitHub. So when the sync button is pressed, all of the logic inside the create method is invoked. Likewise, for any data that we update on the device, when we hit the sync button, the logic inside the update is invoked, and so on. So let me spend a few brief minutes walking through each of these three methods. So the query method basically gets new information from from GitHub, and it passes those new pieces of information back to my device, or the sync method gets it back to my device. Uh, this way, I get information that's on GitHub but not on my device. So basically, an issue can be either in an open or a closed state. And in our example, we want to retrieve all of the issues that are in either open state or closed state. So what we are saying is, for each of those states, I want to issue a request to GitHub that has this format: API github.com/repos/username/repo name/issues. So that is the API call that GitHub has if you want to retrieve a list of issues. So I construct my URL first. So I define what my base URL is. My base URL basically is api.github.com/repos. So that is what I use. So I'm constructing my URL here. So base, and then username, and then the repo name, and then issues. And then if you remember, any API request to GitHub has to have the token, the access token that we received when we initially authorized. So we are sending it the authentication token, and we are saying, I don't care what the state of the issue is, get me that, get me all issues. So we use the REST client.getURL method to basically invoke the API. We get back a JSON response because we are saying, I want to receive the response back as a JSON formatted data. We had a choice of using JSON or XML. We chose to go with JSON because it's easier to parse and faster to transfer as well. So once we receive the response, we parse it and we store it in the add result variable. So again, for those familiar with RhoConnect, this is standard operating procedure. We are not doing anything new here. Same thing with create. Create expects a post request of the format /repo/owner repo name /issues. So we are constructing our URL. We are getting the username from RhoConnect. RhoConnect store. We are passing it the repo name, and again we are sending it the access token. Because GitHub expects this request to be a post method, we are calling REST-client.post, and then we are parsing the response back to get the issue number, which we will use later on in our roads code. Finally, the update method. GitHub expects a patch method, and it expects the URL to be this format: repos owner, repo name, issues, and the issue number. So again, we construct the URL and pass the access token, and we do REST client.patch, and then we pass the constructed URL, and then this updates the issue back to GitHub, and then we parse the response that we get back from GitHub. So that is how you would retrieve the data from GitHub, as well as pushing up information that has changed on your device, either because you created a new issue or you updated an existing issue. And all of this happens when you hit the sync button. So that is basically how we've constructed this application. I've shown you how we use the GitHub OAuth API. I've shown you snippets of how we do the synchronization and snippets of how we do the user interface. I will make this presentation available to you later. So if you want to know more about how to use the GitHub's OAuth API or the Issues API, I've listed the URLs here. I've also listed the RhoMobile documentation. And if you want to know more about our company, this is our website address. And if you want to contact any of us, here's how you would do it. So Rob, I think I'm done with my presentation. So if you'd like, we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, sounds good. But we have a couple of questions that have come in, and while we're asking you questions, I'm gonna put up a question for the audience, and this has something to do with the presentation that we have coming up next month. Let me launch this. This is since I'll be discussing UI frameworks, just wanted to get a sense for the types of UI frameworks that you're using the most often. So there's a couple. It only allows me to put in some, so I don't have them all. There's a ton of them, but anyhow. So while we're getting some information on that, Banu, and we might have to close the poll in a second to answer some of these questions, but on the OAuth, right? You demonstrated and you walked through the sequence for the client side, but what about now? Doesn't the RhoConnect application also need to go through that same process? I'm just a little confused how we could use that same authorization token that we had from the Git mobile application. Aren't they treated as two different applications? Could you explain that one a little bit more?
Yes. So we receive the token through roads, and then we actually the access token that we've received through roads is the same one that we send to RhoConnect. So RhoConnect uses that authentication token whenever it calls any of the GitHub APIs.
Okay. So you don't need to do another authorization sequence, and GitHub is accepting the this basically it thinks that that's the same application as.
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
So that is why it's important that you get the access token from GitHub prior to issuing any requests. So as long as you have the correct access token, your application can use it in any part of the code that it wants to.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Now the screen that you showed for setting up the OAuth on GitHub, is that the
Okay.
same account that is basically creating this application? Like, in other words, um, if you wanted to have another user sign in, does that user need to set up anything on GitHub, or this is just set up on the application that we use? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Let me close the poll. It looks like most people had voted. Thank you very much. Just share the results really quick. Wow, everybody's using jQuery mobile. Okay, so that'd be interesting to kind of see next month what everybody thinks after we show some more. And that's probably because we default use jQuery mobile. So let me hide the results, and it looks like we have your screen back. So yeah, this screen here where you're actually setting up the application.
Yes.
Um, is this so? Is this something every user of your application would need to set up, or could you explain this a little bit more?
Sure. So this is the registration that you do at an application level.
Okay.
So the application uses uh, uh, the application name and your URL to register with OAuth, and at the same time, it also gives the callback URL. So the callback URL is the URL that GitHub will redirect in your application once you successfully authenticate with GitHub. So all of this is done on your behalf by the application. So you as the user don't have to set a callback URL or set your application name. The application is acting on your behalf. The
Ah,
only thing that you would need to do as a user is log in to GitHub when you are prompted to do so.
okay.
So it's a one-time setup that I, as a application developer, will do, and you, as an end user, will just need to use your GitHub credentials to log into GitHub.
Okay. So if I ran your application and logged in with GitHub, and then let's say I then logged into GitHub just in my browser later on, I would see that I have this application listed as a registered application, the Git
Yeah,
mobile
yeah.
application. Okay. And if I wanted to revoke access for whatever reason, this is all done on GitHub's site. Okay.
Exactly, exactly. So let us say for whatever reason uh, you don't want my application that you downloaded to have further access to your GitHub information. So then you can come back to GitHub and revoke access to it. Exactly correct.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And so along those lines as well, you mentioned this is a pretty standard authorization service that other third-party sites like Facebook and those types of sites, you see this. Um, you see this there, and you would go through, if you were building an application for something that provided OAuth, you would basically follow these same exact steps that you outlined in order for you to build an application that may talk to a different service using the same standard.
Correct, correct,
Okay.
exactly correct. So if you were to use roads to build interfaces to GitHub, sorry, Facebook or Twitter, the sequence of steps would essentially be the same. You would register your application, and then you would give it the callback URL. Uh, so the API calls that those providers provide may be different, but the sequence of steps is essentially the same. The concept is the same.
Okay. And then if you can just go back to your RhoConnect source adapter for a minute.
Yes.
I had a question about that. Okay, so where we're getting these user details from, is this, does your application, I guess, store in a user model all of the
Uh,
information that's saved, or?
so it stores it in the RhoConnect store. So if you look at line 105, so we are saying get the user details from store. So RhoConnect has a way of storing any information that you would like, and that's how we are getting the user information.
Okay. And so we don't, there's no need to use the authentication that RhoConnect provides. This is something different, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
This is another typical way of using RhoConnect. So when you go through the documentation for RhoConnect, so the method that you described, Rob, is one way to do it. This is another way to do it.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, great, fantastic. So I know you mentioned you're going to provide the presentation. Is there any way, and I know you're not able to share the actual code, this is not an open source project, but is there any way that somebody could actually run this application? Is this application up on the Google Market and iOS App Store, or how does somebody actually run this application?
So we are exploring options on how to make this available to everybody. So the only challenge that we face is RhoConnect requires licenses, and so we are talking with folks at MSI on how to run this. So we could essentially make this available on App Store. That is not the issue. The issue is how many RhoConnect licenses do we purchase? How many end users are we expecting to use this application? So it's more of a licensing issue
Yeah.
than
Okay.
anything.
I
But
get it.
we'll provide an update on our website when this is available for you to download on
Okay.
App Store.
All right. Sounds good. I don't see any other questions that have come in. If you just give it another second here for anybody to type in some last minute questions. Um, Actually, one other one on the user interface. Which are we using jQuery mobile on this, or did you use a different UI framework? What was the?
No, we are using jQuery mobile.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Now, I think when I saw you do when you logged into GitHub, I didn't see this a screen come up and say this application wants these types of services. Is that because you
Yeah,
already authenticated, or
that is
maybe
exactly
maybe I
correct.
saw it but I
So
missed it?
no, no, you're right. So I that is because I already authenticated. You didn't see it, but if I were to log in as a different user, assuming I can remember which user I have not used to test it, it will prompt me to give access. So let me try that real quick.
So I guess one other
Okay,
way that
there you go.
oh, okay, there we go. Okay. So this screen right here, this is just coming from GitHub. This is
This
not
is coming from GitHub.
okay. And then
So at
so I
this point,
yeah,
yeah.
I guess it depends
So
on the service provider you're integrating with, the type of UI they provide. Like um, you're not really in any control of what they show in terms of login and authorization. Making sure it fits on the form factor and all that stuff. It's totally out of your control, right?
that is correct. That is unfortunately one of the things that is out of our control.
Okay. And then it says here, all right, so I see the screen will be able to do the following, and that list that's shown is listed based on what your application asked for from the
Correct.
service. Okay.
Correct.
And then you authorize it, and then or you can deny it, and then now it's added, to your list basically, like you showed before.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And once I authorize it, uh, it will not prompt me again. So it depends on the service provider. Some service providers will have you authorize every single time you log in. Some don't. So
Hmm.
GitHub doesn't.
Right. Okay. All right, sounds good. That looks good. Somebody asked a question while you were talking about the licensing. I could probably answer this. So yeah, so the licensing that Bonu was mentioning before is on RhoConnect. So RhoConnect, we have licensing. I'm not an expert on the licensing for RhoConnect, so I'm not going to. I'll get back as far as the exact licensing structure we have, but I believe it is based off of the number of users that we have or devices. You could actually, I guess, you could write this application without going through RhoConnect if you didn't want to have the synchronization and I guess talk directly to GitHub's APIs. You would just have to kind of manage the the data locally, right? Um,
That's correct.
yeah, so and I guess for the reason for doing the synchronization is to have this information available offline, right? So you have the
Exactly
information.
correct.
Yeah. So if you wanted to always connect an application, you can kind of get around that issue by just going directly to the service, which some people do. Okay, so would device users? Here's another question: would device users be able to add issues without having to be authenticated? Yeah, offline. So let's say we already authenticated with the user, and now the device is offline, and now you created a new issue on the device. When the device comes back online, it's just going to do the synchronization again, and the issue should be added. No.
That is correct. So because we use RhoConnect, you will be able to create issues or modify them offline. And when you get back online, as long as your session has not timed out, when you hit sync, you should be able to automatically synchronize your data. If your session has timed out, you'll be prompted to log into GitHub again.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions. I don't. I don't see any other questions, and it's good timing because we're pretty much at the top of the hour. Um, all right. Well, hey, listen. Thanks everybody for joining, and thank you, Banu and Kutir, especially for stepping up and giving us this demonstration, opening up your code. Fantastic. I appreciate all the efforts here by you and your team.
Oh, thank you, Rob, for the opportunity, and thank you, everybody, for attending and asking the questions.
Okay, great. So, be sure to tune in next time again, next month, April 3rd. We'll be going over UI frameworks and hopefully get you guys some exposure to some other options in addition to jQuery Mobile that you might find interesting for your application. So, thanks again, joining everybody. This is Rob Galvin. Thanks again, Banu. We'll see everybody next time.